Sam, I'm a trans man. I think like a boy, I look like a girl. Something needs to be fixed.
My name is Douglas Martin. I often go by D, short form, just the letter with a period.
Unfortunately, the world is set up to be male-female and in a binary, and people just aren't like that. A lot of us are in between.
Kind of a genderqueer, gender-morphic androgyne woman.
Not everyone who's transgender is going to use medical interventions and be on hormones and do sex reassignment surgery, but for some of us, we do want that.
I have no interest in physical changes or anything like that. Genderqueer basically means not really ascribing to the gender binary, so that men are male and women are female, because I'm a woman that's male. Gender morphic is kind of in some ways my own term, just because apparently I have this way of appearing as a woman or a man sometimes in the same conversation.
It's cliche, but I didn't exactly fit in with the girls. You know, playing house, they were always like, you be the dad, and I was like, okay.
The terms female and dyke just had worked for a long time, but they just no longer fit who I was.
I'm not really out in high school, so I'm just like that butch lesbian kid with the colorful hair.
For me, transgender means kind of an umbrella term that encompasses most of the trans community. So that would include intersex people, genderqueer people, third gender people, bi-gender people, just kind of an umbrella term.
In fact, there are intersex people who are neither one nor the other, or they're both. I mean, as soon as you get into saying somebody has to be male or female, you don't even know how to describe and include those people anymore. But this isn't just, you know, somebody who's following a fad or something, as it's sometimes accused of trans people, right? This is a biological fact of the matter. There's no hard and fast distinction between male and female, whether you're talking about sex or gender.
I think it's important to remember as well that the terms are very contested, and that you could ask me and then ask someone else and there'd be a completely different answer. And that's the beauty of trans, right? As much as gender is fluid, the definitions are fluid as well.
Trans youth experience significant violence and discrimination in their environments, whether it be school, whether it be their families, in the community in general. And trans youth, depending where they are in their stages of transition, may or may not be able to pass. They may be very visible to the public, and as a result may be very vulnerable to harassment and discrimination.
My definition of passing is the ability to kind of move through the world in your gender of choice without being read by others. It's a safety concern. And the more a person is able to pass and get through the day, the easier their life becomes. It's also important to remember that a person's ability to pass has a lot to do with their cultural capital. You might see a trans person and think, oh, they don't pass very well, or, oh, I can tell she's a man. It has nothing to do with how trans a person is. It has to do with the access they've had to the resources to be able to get to the point of passing.
I went to a queer camp in Edmonton. They really introduced me to the whole trans, identity. And I was like, hey, that might be me.
Probably finally feeling at home in my body. For years, I kind of felt like I was a bit of a walking head and was very separate and didn't feel really connected to my physical self. And so to finally have like a mirror reflect who I always felt I was inside has been amazing.
I feel good finally, I guess. I don't know. All those years of going through, grad and prom and having to wear dresses all over the place. I'm like, this is not me. I feel really awkward. Friends have generally been good. I was at a party on Friday with a bunch of friends and they refer to me as he all the time, so it's nice.
I have the potential to relate to men really closely. I have the potential to relate to women really closely. I have the potential to relate to people who are neither or both, or just like, I have potentially the entire expanse of human experience open to me.
It's YouTube. I don't know. Like, there's lots of resources, just people and their experiences, and how I don't feel as much as a minority because I have people that are going through the same thing. My girlfriend's really good about everything, so that helps too. My parents are always there. They're always like, even if you don't have anywhere to go, you can come back, always. And I'm like, okay. Hardest part, I'd say not fixing it, but like finding a place that I belong. Like, I don't think I really belong in the gay community anymore, and I don't really belong in the straight community either. I'm kind of in the middle.
Having initially defined as a lesbian feminist and as a dyke, and having spent 25 years in that community and then 15 years working in women's services, the most difficult part for me has been coming to terms with now being a white male and the privilege that that entails. Before I could kind of say, oh, you know, I'm white, but I'm female, or I'm white, but I'm queer. And I tell you, like, I have never felt whiteness and think I finally get the damage that whiteness does now that it's embodied in male.
Never seeing or hearing of anything like me, ever. Like, I really love movies, and I really love books and all kinds of stories and things like that. There's nobody like me anywhere. Except for mythological beings that generally people are afraid of and try and hurt. So in a way I feel kind of mythological, almost. And just generally, it makes it really difficult to relate to people.
My birth certificate, although it says Will Rowe, still has female on it, because I can't change that sex designation until I've had a sex reassignment surgery. So I have had to have a hysterectomy in order to get that changed. Now, if I can't find a doctor who's willing to provide that hysterectomy, then I pay for it, which is, I think, about $5,000 or $6,000.
I'm planning on researching more into it and hopefully starting in like June. I'm excited.
If a person decides they want to go through the Centre for Addiction of Mental Health because they're the only agency that can okay via OHIP to get any of this covered, then there's that waiting list, there's the transphobia from CAMH, and it's a very difficult process, and it's a long process.
This girl turns around as I'm waiting to use the washroom, and she's like, "This is the girls' washroom." I was like, "I know." And she's just like...
Washrooms are probably the most difficult piece of being trans, especially if you're genderqueer or you're more liminal and fluid in your gender. Even for those of us who pass during the transition period, it's got to be like the worst time. In fact, I talk to a lot of trans people who actually plan their whole days around knowing where the next trans-positive washroom is, knowing where the security guard's not going to yank them out and say they're in the wrong washroom, or where they're going to feel safe enough, or where there's a gender-neutral washroom or a family washroom.
Like, it's uncomfortable not to have somewhere. Because guys are like, girls are like.
When I think of trans youth, I think of lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth 15 or 20 years ago. When I think about services, for example, and the lack of information that service providers in Ontario had about the needs of these very vulnerable groups of young people, and I think that's where we are today with trans youth.
Rates of suicide, rates of being kicked out of the family home, a high percentage of homeless youth are queer and trans identified, higher risk behaviors, drug and alcohol use. I mean, it all correlates to our support systems or lack of support systems. Within the school system, I think it's important to respect their gender of choice.
I have people in my class, fag this, fag that, and nothing gets said about it. The teachers are kind of like, hey, don't, but nothing like consequential.
Learning increases exponentially once a child knows that they're safe in their environment and that they will be supported by that teacher and by the administration.
I was in a girls' gym class in grade 11, and they actually touched on like partners rather than like boyfriends, and I was like, that's neat.
Do lessons on gender and, you know, what does this look like? Why are we in this binary system? The same as on queer stuff, right? Introduce the concepts. The more diverse the classroom is, the richer it is.
It's fantastic that the schools make such an effort to be multicultural. So if they can make the same effort to be multigenderal, what kind of role models do we want to have for our children? Do we want to have the kind of role models for children who just promote the status quo and are ignorant and lie to themselves and to other people? Or do we want to have the kind of role models who have integrity and who stand up for what they believe in and who they are and work to educate people? Who's the better role model?
As a community psychologist, I like to think of levels of intervention and how far out, you know, we need to start. So we need to do things that will change the attitudes of young people, first and foremost. And I think in some ways that's the easy thing to do. Then there's the bigger picture in schools. I think that has to do with policy and shifting and changing policy so that school environments are safe. And that policy and the way in which we implement policy has to guarantee that right to a safe education. That's the piece, I think, that is a little bit more difficult to do. We can implement policies, we can train teachers, but until we kind of shatter invisibility and just make these issues normative so that they're talked about all of the time, that work is going to be difficult to do.